Once again, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our virtual class lecture for today for the course, The Contemporary World. And for this particular lecture, we do virtual class lecture. We will be discussing about global migration, which happens to be included in your weeks 11 to 13 modules. Well, this is actually the module prior to your pre-final examination next week. So again, you are on week 11 to 13, and in this particular lecture class, you will be discussing about global migration. So at the end of this module, you are expected to understand the causes of global migration, knows the effects of migration. So what is global migration? Basically, global migration is also known as the international migration. Okay, have you heard of a friend or a family that migrated in other countries? The most common countries are actually what? United States of America, Canada, as far as I know. Some are in Australia. Some of my friends migrated in Australia, and some are in New Zealand. Well, some lately, from some 10 years ago, Singapore is a place that's a go-to place for those who are into information technology program because of the skills that Singapore needs for IT skills. And have you heard also of an old friend, for example, that migrated alone? Say, a nurse that migrated, for example, in the United States of America. And for quite a while, she lives there, and then later on, and you would just knew that her family also migrated in the United States of America because of her, who initially migrated as a registered nurse and eventually became a citizen of the United States of America and also in other countries as well. So basically, that's the type of migration that we know. But this module discusses of the different types of migration, aside from the migration that we knew already. Okay, so as per definition, global migration is a change of residence by an individual or group. But of course, this is not limited to limited to, well, as we go along, we will be discussing about it. Crossing of the country also is a definition of global migration of a political and administrative unit for a certain minimum period of time. Probably you've heard of people who works, for example, in Department of Foreign Affairs, that some of them are assigned to different countries, say for 2 to 5 years, due to administrative functions, and assigned there in, for example, in Philippine Embassy. So that person, together with their families, are crossing the boundary due to administrative functions. But again, that is only for a certain minimum period of time. Because personally, I've known families who cross the boundary for administrative functions for 5 years, and then they come back here in the Philippines, and again for quite a while they stay here, and then um, sent again for an administrative function for another country as well for a minimum period of time. Also, another definition of global migration is the movement of refugees, displaced persons, uprooted people, as well as economic migrants. So what are the economic migrants? Probably your father or your mother are working abroad. They are called economic migrants. They leave them for a while due to work and for economic reasons that they cannot find job, for example here, and they were given the opportunity to work in other country, and then which they think is giving them uplifting the economic status of their family. That's why they decided to migrate and work abroad. So internal migration naman refers to a move from one area, a province or a municipality to another within a country. And during this pandemic, I've heard of I've I've seen posts in Facebook that who usually work in Manila and were displaced and decided to move back decided to move to a province instead of staying in Manila, um, due to the displacement of their job, and then they decided to move to a province to find another source of income, and that's internal migration. That's moving from one area to another within a country. International migration is a territorial relocation of people between nation states. Okay, so we've established a definition of migration. I think we are now ready to discuss some of the aspects with regards to migration. So why people migrate? So global migration is a cause and effect relationship. People move across international borders for a variety of reasons, including this, but they are not limited to this. Meaning there are some other reasons why they migrate. Because of one of the reasons is safety. Okay, because of the natural disaster that happened, that they thought that leaving their place and transferring to another country is or to another place is the best idea and is the best decision due to political conflict. I'm sorry, but during the time of the Marcos regime, and that was when I was younger. I'm reading the newspaper, and hearing in the radio and television, and it's in print that some of non-allies of the Marcos administration opted to leave the Philippines and migrated to other places. Some are in the United States because of political conflict. Some migrate due to education. So some others find it better to study abroad or to earn further studies. Some found a scholarship offered in other countries, so they move there to study. People migrate because family are already in that particular country or particular place, and that they thought that they feel that they would like to be united as a family in that particular place. People move due to career. Some of your parents, for example, are engineers or doctors or nurses that they find a better opportunity to another place, and they think that the career would grow better in that particular place, so they move or migrate. And as I've said, for the economic betterment, and as I've said, others would really migrate and move to a place where they think that they would grow economically, and how much they would earn would really suffice and meet their needs better than where they used to be, they were used to live. Okay, moving on. Basically, causes of migration is a push and due to a push and pull factor. Some of the reasons that trigger global migration can be explained by what is known as push-pull factor. What do you mean by push? Push factor. So, by just the meaning of it, you are pushed to leave your place and go to another place to migrate. So, push factors in a destination country that attract the individual or group to leave their home. These factors attract to a new place largely because of the opportunities presented in the new location were not available to them probably previously. So they are pushed to leave because of the reasons that to a place that they would go to would give them opportunities are better than they are previously located. I'm sorry, I was reading it the wrong way. So it's a pull factor. A push factor is still what I'm trying to say. It's a condition that forces people to leave their home. Okay? A person would typically move home because of distress, places that experience drought and famine. So it's a push factor that push them for some reasons that they should live. A pull factor is a reason that they find the opportunity from that particular country pulled them to go to that particular country because of a better opportunity that they have, the better opportunity that the country or particular place offers them. I'm sorry for the interchange of the how I read it, but it's still the same. I am explaining it the way it should be. So here is a matrix for us to be for us to better understand the push and pull factor of global or migration. You are pushed to live because you think there are few services, that you think that you deserve better than what the particular place offers. Lack of job opportunities. So you are pushed to live because of the lack of job opportunities. You are unhappy with your life, so you are pushed to live. Poor transport links. You are not satisfied with the transportation system. And it affects your daily routine, it affects your daily life, it affects how you transport from one place to another. That causes you distress, for example. You are pushed to live because of the natural disasters. The place you used to be in is prone for natural disasters, for example. You are pushed to live because of wars. Just like what happened in Mindanao, for example. Even if that your resources, even if that your Your house is in Mindanao, for that particular place in Mindanao, but because of the war, you are pushed to leave. And again, how can you live without food if there's a shortage of food? So you are pushed to leave that place. And how come you are going to that particular place because of the opportunities, because of the possible services that you think could better give you is an example of pull factors: access to services, better job opportunities, more entertainment facilities, better transport system, improved living conditions, for example, for a better life, better way of life, and family links. Okay, so the pull factors could be the answer why you are pushed to leave. And here are some of the categories of international migrants. Okay, these are the temporary labor migrants, also known as guest workers or overseas contract workers. People who migrate for a limited period of time in order to take up employment and send money home. So that's what we are referring to a while ago. Yeah, some of our fellow citizens are in Saudi, mostly in Middle East. Some are in Singapore. Okay, another one is highly skilled and business migrants. People with qualifications as managers, executives, professionals, technicians, or similar who seek employment through international labor markets for scarce skills. So they are actually, it could be a dual factor. It could be a push and a pull factor. But definitely, some of these men who are qualified as managers and executives who go abroad is most likely because there's a scarce of that particular skills for that particular country, which your skill or the skills of these qualified managers fit the qualification of that particular company that they seek for that specific skill of that particular person. That's why he is pushed. That's why he is pulled. I mean, to to such a status of highly skilled and business migrants. And he could have his reasons why he opted to leave, he or she opted to leave. It could be a better package. Irregular migrants is also a category of immigrants of a migration. These are undocumented illegal migrants, people who enter a country in search for employment without the necessary documents and permits. Those who are staying in another country started, I mean, these are common, and I'm sorry to discuss this, but these are true in some ways, that people go to another place or another country as tourists, for example. And if you enter as a tourist, you are given a specific time until when you will be staying, say 3 months or 6 months. And these people probably opted to stay beyond 6 months or 3 months. And then they are now categorized as irregular migrants or undocumented illegal migrants. And definitely the reason why they overstayed is because they found a job that they think is better than the previous country that they are in. And they ended up overstaying as a tourist, and then they are now called irregular migrants. But of course, there are other factors why others are tagged as irregular migrants, aside from the what I mentioned. Forced migration is also a type of, it's a category of migration. forced migration, movements of refugees and internally displaced people, those displaced by conflicts within their country of origin, as well as people displaced by natural or environmental disasters, chemical or nuclear disasters, famine, or development factor projects. So this is an example of a push factor. Okay, they were displaced by natural disasters. They are pushed to leave because of chemical or nuclear disaster. They are pushed to leave. So that's why it's called a forced migration. Whether you like it or not, you are forced to leave. Whether um, it's not a choice of staying or not. It's just a one choice, but rather you are forced to live. And this one, what I am referring a while ago, is a family members, family reunion or family reunification, a recognized reason for migration because of the presence of one or more family members in a certain country. Therefore, enables the rest of the divided family or only specific members of the family to immigrate to that country as well. Yes, this is an example of this started, for example, with one member of the family working as overseas Filipino worker, for example, a nurse or an engineer in another country. And then later on, because of the length of stay, the length of stay of this particular professional in that particular country would give them the chance to apply for a permanent residence and eventually become a citizen of that particular country, which makes them, which gives them the opportunity um, to bring their other family members to the particular country. And also, a return migrants. These are people who return to their countries of origin after a period in another country. So, those people who leave for administrative functions and after serving for 5 to 6 years, for example, would return to the country after serving, after they have served that specific time allotted for the particular um, employee or for the particular government official. This is only an example, but there are others naman na, say, for those people who opted to come back to the origin country instead of applying for a permanent residence, then that's a return migrant. So what are the effects of global migration? International migration can be a positive force for economic and social development, offering mechanisms to rebalance labor markets between areas of origin and destination, and thereby increase the global productivity of labor. Later on, the clip that I will video clip that I will be showing you talks about the balance of the labor market because that particular country, for example, could not meet the the labor requirements, and they opted to welcome migrants who have skills that particular country needs. Migration across international borders can also help promote investment and higher standards of living in countries of origin through remittances sent by migrants to families and communities back home. And this is primarily the reason why we say that our OFW are our new heroes, our modern heroes, because we cannot deny the fact how they were able to uplift the economic status of their families because they are working abroad and they were able to send money and remittances to their respective families that for a better life. But um, for those family that they were able to send the children to school, not only that, Um, Not only that, but they were able to choose what type of course or program or what type of career they would want to pursue, because they have a choice, because they have means to to pursue their dreams, because they have choices um, because because their parents, for example, working abroad, was able to give them a higher standard of living, instead of they thought of it, if they were working in the country of origin, for example, that they would compare that they wouldn't be able to meet the standards, that standard of living that they dream. So migration is an important factor in the erosion of traditional boundaries between languages, cultural, ethnic, and national states. So this gives a healthy cultural diversity. Can you imagine United States of America, for example, who are welcoming migrants from other countries? That how rich their cultural diversity of that particular country, because of the many nationalities they welcome to visit and they welcome to live in a particular country. And it's it's just also an important factor that the global migration would be able to give a rich cultural diversity for a particular country. And also, migration can present a variety of challenges ranging from simple discomfort to profound shifts in mental health. And it is included in the risk factor if one migrates or a family migrates. And you know how challenging it would be if if you're in a new place, adapting to its culture, adapting to the food, for example, and adapting to the environment. And it could be in a journal that I've read, one challenge that he had was when he transferred to the United States, that in the US, their breakfast would suffice a coffee and a bread, but in the country of origin, that, for example, uh, we eat rice, uh, a heavy meal. So parang for him it's a big deal, and it could be big or small challenge, but still it could be it could be it's still a challenge. Culture shock is a predictable culprit for migratory challenges. Challenge in language, diet, and that's what I'm referring. Politics, religion, and environment are immediately visible. The act of leaving home country can be emotionally difficult, especially for those who may never be able to return and or were forced out by situations that they could not control. So these are just the setbacks of migration, but I think they're aware of this, and they should be prepared for these scenarios. And here is a matrix of explaining the positive and negative effects for both the country losing migrants and the country gaining immigrants. For the country losing people, what are the advantages? Of course, there are fewer people to be fed and housed. So, in terms of how the government would sustain its housing and the food supplies of, of people, and then if they leave, and then that's an advantage for them. Income sent home, for example, by Turkish guest workers in the German car industry, reduces pressure on jobs and resources. Okay, disadvantages: loss of young and most able. Normally, those who are migrating for a career abroad, these are the young professionals. These are the young professionals who had just gotten their experience in the home country. And when they were able to develop the skills, then they are ready to move and um, find a job from another country which fits their skills, but for a better pay. These are young people. So loss of young men creates an unbalanced population structure. Loss of working age people. Loss of those most likely to have education skills. Division of families is one factor because when one leaves, then family is not complete already. But because of the advantages that this brings, and how they would uplift the migration of one member of the family would uplift the economic standard, and they just accept the fact that they wouldn't be together for a period of time. So it's a pros and cons analysis. So elderly population remains, so there's a higher death rate. So it could be a reason pala for a higher death rate because what who were left behind are the elderly because the young ones are leaving, and yeah, the ratio is not that there's an imbalance of there's an unbalanced population structure. And for this matrix, for the country gaining people, advantages, cheap labor helps overcome labor shortages. Is also what I've said. Countries are welcoming people because of the shortage of the skills, that the shortage of labor for that particular place, country, for example. Immigrants are often prepared to do unskilled jobs. Some immigrants are highly skilled. Cultural diversity. So you see how important cultural diversity is. Disadvantages, language problems. So it's really hard to adjust because but probably it's just for a few months or years, there would be language problems, racial ethnic tensions. Yes, you cannot act freely because you would always consider how would people act and how would people um, would take one's actions because of cultural diversity. Jobs lost to incoming workers, loss of those who most likely have education and skills, and pressure on housing and services. Immigrants tend to be less healthy, facing strain on health service, and they tend to live in low quality housing. And again, the limited skills education in immigrant population. So these are the matrix for the advantages and disadvantages of those immigrants leaving the country and those immigrants or the country who are gaining people due to migration. So here's a video clip that sums up what I've discussed, and there's also additional information or data that this video clip supplies. This is quite a long, I mean, an old clip. This data referred to 2011, 2010 data. I was looking for a video presentation that is closer to 2020, but this one is one of the best that discuss about global migration. Can you hear the audio?
More than 100,000 years ago, the first modern humans left Africa and began to colonize the world.
Yes, ma'am, we can hear it.
Then, human history is also a history of migration. Migration has always been a strong impetus towards human development. These days, however, migration is often seen as a problem or threat. But what exactly is migration? What are its underlying causes? And what problems and opportunities does migration present? Migration is defined as the permanent change of residence of a person or group. It is a natural social phenomenon. Humans have colonized the entire world and penetrated its remotest areas. Migration has taken place within very different contexts: military conquest, flight of refugees, expulsion, or enslavement. But migrants have also traveled in search of economic opportunities, new settlement areas, or trade routes. Currently, approximately 216 million people are living away from their place of birth. This number equals about 3% of the world population. Analyzing the reasons for migration, one distinguishes between push and pull factors. Often both appear together. Push factors are circumstances in the country of origin that lead people to emigrate. For example, poverty, war, or environmental disasters. Pull factors are conditions in the destination country that make immigration attractive, such as economic opportunity and political freedom. Considering these reasons, one distinguishes between different forms of migration. Asylum seekers are fleeing war or persecution in their home country. The internationally accepted Geneva Convention states, no person may be sent back to a country where they face inhumane treatment, torture, or the death penalty. Labor migration is based on the hope for a better economic future. But it can be difficult for people from poor countries to get a work or residence visa in a rich country. Migrants who enter the destination country in an informal way, or who do not leave the country after the expiration of a tourist visa, are referred to as illegal migrants. Another case is the international migration of highly trained professionals. It takes place both between developed countries and between developing and developed countries. This form of migration is often desired and encouraged by the destination countries. What are the main migration routes today? By far, most immigrants live in the United States, followed by Russia and Germany. The main countries of origin are Mexico, India, China, and Russia. In proportion to their population, Persian Gulf countries host the largest share of migrants, about 35% of their population. They mostly come from South Asia and Egypt. Most migrants in the US come from Latin America, particularly from Mexico. In Europe, the origin of immigrants differs considerably between countries and reflects their historical development. In Germany and Denmark, a large share of migrants are of Turkish origin. Most immigrants in France, Portugal, and Spain come from their former colonies. In addition, there is a strong migration within Europe. This is promoted by the EU's principle of free movement. Citizens of the EU are allowed to live in any EU member state without restrictions. Nowadays, migration is often seen as a threat. This is caused by a number of fears. For example, the idea that immigrants are expensive and a burden to the welfare system of the destination country. Especially in host countries that offer few opportunities of social mobility to migrants, they are usually the most vulnerable parts of society. Another fear is that the host country will lose what is perceived as its national identity, especially through the influx of groups from other religions or cultures. Often, there is no successful integration strategy, so different ethnic groups live in separate neighborhoods. As a result of these fears, the migration policies in Western industrial countries have become increasingly restrictive. The US has built a giant fence with high-tech surveillance to seal its southern border with Mexico. The European Union is also fortifying its borders. Migration is perceived primarily as a security problem. The EU is trying to block migrants before they reach its territory. This is done by bilateral agreements with the departure and transit countries and an ever-increasing control of refugee routes on land and water. In 2004, the EU established Frontex, a joint agency to coordinate the surveillance and closure of its external borders. Human rights groups point out that many refugees with a legitimate claim for asylum are blocked this way. It is increasingly difficult to reach Europe. The result is that migration attempts are getting more and more risky and often end disastrously. According to conservative estimates, between 1988 and 2010, approximately 15,000 people died attempting to reach the EU, more people than at any other border in the world. What is not considered most of the time, migration also has positive aspects. Migration contributes to the economic development in migrants' countries of origin. Migrants around the world transfer over $300 billion to their home country each year. That is considerably more than the official development assistance to these countries. In European countries, as well as in other industrialized nations, such as Japan, the birth rate has dropped to a low level, below the replacement rate. The result, declining population and an aging society. Experts believe that Europe will soon be heavily dependent on migration in order to meet its employment needs and to stabilize the retirement system. Finally, migration contributes to the cultural diversity of destination countries. We see that the debate over migration is burdened by fear and prejudice. The effect is a restrictive immigration policy and strict efforts to prevent migration to destination countries. This is not just a problem in terms of ethics, but also politically and economically questionable. In order to deal with the problems attached to migration, it is especially important to develop and implement a constructive migration policy. Such a policy would include regulated immigration, as well as provide rights for legitimate asylum seekers.
Okay, that's it. So that sums up our lecture for today. I hope you gained insights on the topic global migration.